Today we are super excited to have no other than Madhav Bhandari, the CMO at Storylane. Here's a guest in the SaaSiest podcast. Welcome, Madhav. How are you today?
Doing amazing. And Thomas, great job. You just got my pronunciation exactly
Okay.
right. No,
Yeah.
I'm serious. It's
Okay. Because
exactly.
we didn't sort of try it out before. I just went for it.
I'm happy to hear that because I sometimes make fun of him because he always says the name of the guest and some names are maybe not more as common for us and like he's really turning into a pro here. I don't know, Thomas, with you and ChatGPT, you're like he has a cheat code here. He does something
Yeah,
to
it's
get
the
the
same
names right.
thing that you do when you're meeting people, and you always find some sport connection. So I'm doing this linguistics exercise instead.
Yeah. So speaking about sports, are you a cricket fan?
Well, I mean, I am, but I think one of my top sort of players kind of retired. So I've
Who
kind of
was
lost.
your top player?
Oh, Virat Kohli, who's like this. I don't know if you follow cricket, but like he's like one
A
of the.
little bit, enough to get in trouble. But then when people talk a lot about it, then I don't know. I don't know.
Daniel has all the channels, so he probably, sees this one once in a
Like
while.
what amazes me with cricket is that a game can last like days.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like literally days.
But
Like you play a full day and it's like nobody won, so we continue tomorrow.
5 days. Yeah.
Yeah.
that's crazy.
Anyway, like we're not gonna talk too much about cricket. So Madhav, tell us like who are you? Like for us, you are famous. You're a LinkedIn celebrity. You're a fantastic CMO. You've been listed everywhere as a CMO to watch. And I personally have a crush on your jean jacket, like the Storyline branded jacket. But like, if we set all those sides or all those things aside, who are you? If there's somebody listening to this and like they have no idea who you are, how would you introduce yourself?
You're incredibly sweet to say all of those things and hype me up. But yeah, I think it's maybe 10% of that, I would say. Who am I is a very tough question, but yeah, I mean, what I do right now is I run marketing at a company called Storylane, but I've also been in marketing, especially in B2B tech for almost 15 years now. So done it at a bunch of companies, and I would say I sort of specialize in that early stage, like say like 5 million to 20 million sort of AR. I mean, 20 million, I mean, the limit is because I haven't really crossed beyond that. So it's like,
Soon enough.
yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like, but like, I think it's that phase where it's like, okay, the company's starting to pick up a little bit, and then, like, you start to like build out the motion for it. So that's what I've worked on for more than a decade. And yeah, and then I'm actually a computer science engineer, as a background, and then just happened to enter into marketing because I was very interested to understand how, like, I wanted to build my own startup, but I didn't know how. So the next best thing was to join a startup and understand how the business operates, right? And then so I started. I joined a very early stage startup, did sales, marketing, CS, even product management, to be honest. And then just trying to connect the dots. What works? What does it take from 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 20? Like all of that. And that's when I just like got deeply involved into it. So even today, if you ask me, I'm definitely not the most creative person or anything. I think the reason I'm in marketing is to just like solve like business problems. That's how I sort of deal with it. Like if there's a problem that we're dealing with, oh, we're stuck at a certain revenue, we want to get out of it, right? Like that's how I would operate it. Not like, okay, oh, we have this channel, we need to make that work. Like that's not how I operate.
And where in the world are you right now?
Right now, I'm in Delhi, India, which is
Yeah.
kind of like where I'm based out of. But I oscillate between San Francisco and Delhi because the Stolen sort of founders and the exec team is all in the Bay Area. So I spend like, I guess like almost, I would say, once every quarter there for a couple of weeks, and I'm back here. And so that's what's happening with me right now.
Okay.
You're on the road quite a bit. So tell us a little bit about Storyline. Like what do you guys do?
Yeah, so it's a demo automation software. It was like a new tech that came, I guess, in 2020, which is basically like there was a lot of people that were kind of frustrated with like getting on sales calls with people, and then just like being able to see the product was like 3 weeks away, right? And then uh, like this tech, what it provides is that you can basically create like a front end replica of your product and put it up on the website so people can see the product at their own pace, click around in the buttons and all of that. And then when they actually want to talk to sales is when they can sort of reach out. So that's kind of like the space we're in, and it's particularly for sales, marketing, and now lately CS teams as well.
All
Yeah, and
right.
so we've been around for 4 years.
All right. So I used to work as a sales engineer within pre-sales. So would that put me out of a job?
No, no, it's not that. I think it's more like I'm glad that you asked, because what happens is that usually a sales engineer is supporting like an insane amount of AE. So like the SE to AE ratio is crazily wild, right? So every AE wants like, hey, I want my sales engineer in the demo. So what we're saying is that, listen, you don't have to get on every demo.
Mm.
Like focus on like the high leverage deals, and the rest you just create demo templates that AEs can like, that's vetted by you, but the AEs can use it in their calls. So
Okay.
basically 5 AEs can, like, we have like a company where there's 50 SEs supporting 1,000 AEs,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
nothing breaking right now. So that's kind of like what we're talking about.
Yeah. And then you risk minimize some of these creative AE like demos that they are doing on
I
the
feel
fly, right?
I feel an insult coming here. Like,
No,
my career on the back of Thomas demos.
no, but the sort of the interaction or the yeah with me and Danny, we have that background, worked a lot together
Yeah.
with the AE's sales engineer connection. So, but super interesting. And what can you say about the companies that sort of buys your solution? Is there certain verticals, sizes of companies, or who do you attract?
Yeah, so we go after mid-market and enterprise. So
Yeah.
think of a company that's, I would say, like, at, I don't know, not in terms of revenue, but it'd be like a company that's generally either in, let's say, HR tech, manufacturing, generally any tech company that either wants to try out a free trial option, but, doesn't want to sort of, it doesn't makes it, sense for
Mm.
them, or they have like a sort of issue with like the sales engineers being like deeply under, like the team being very under resourced with SEs, right? And they just don't maybe have the budget for that, or it's just generally like CMOs looking to understand, hey, how do I improve conversions with like a new content format?
Mm.
Like it's
Yeah.
usually these companies.
So would you say that this is a category that is well known now? Or does
That's
people don't realize that this exists?
I think it is getting there. So I would say in terms of B2B tech particularly, there's quite a few people that are aware about what the interactive demo tech is, especially in the US.
Mm.
Europe and the UK generally are slightly behind on that. But
Okay.
in terms of how many have actually implemented, there's actually not that many.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of
Cool.
like it. Yeah.
Would be cool to see it in action sometime. Maybe try out it on Daniel and see what happens. But to put some figures behind your business, just to understand sort of where we are, what can you say about your ARR, number of customers and employees, and so on?
Yeah, so we basically crossed 10 million ARR, I think in September of last year.
Nice.
And right now we're probably between 10 to 15, I would say at this point, and sort of navigating the journey to maybe, well, hopefully cross 20 million by the end of this year. So
Oh,
we're on track, but yeah, we'll see about that one. And then we're angel strapped in the sense like no additional
Nice.
funding and no plans to
okay.
raise any money on that one as well.
Are you
Uh,
profitable? Are you profitable?
yeah, we're profitable.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. So that's the dream, right? Like you've got to sort of, and we're also like fully remote, and like I think the team size in total is 50 people at this point.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you serve any particular markets, or do you focus your marketing activities or of any particular markets?
We just focus on selling to, pre-sales and marketing and sales, right? Like so the whole GTM stack basically, and
Yeah.
then mostly to B2B tech companies. Anyone who has a software product that they're selling, right,
Yeah.
is kind of like the market that we're going after.
But is it predominantly US or Europe or Asia or?
Yeah, I think so. We're like in terms of our existing customer base, I would say like it's almost 70% US and 30%
Okay.
rest of the world. But Europe is sort of like a very fast growing segment in the sense it was insanely surprising that how I think one of our AEs basically focuses only on Europe. And I think last year she basically crossed 1 million in
Okay.
accounts from it. So we've been spending a lot of time growing in Europe, and UK is another really big market for us.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Sounds like you are on a very interesting trajectory and gonna hit that 20 million soon.
Yeah, I mean, really cool. And what we wanted to discuss with you a little bit is it's a crowded space, not your space, but any software category. There's like so many options. A lot of us, we sound the same, we look the same, and sometimes it feels like it's the race to average. Because if we all look the same, if we all sound the same, well, what's the difference? And then, like, the nightmare scenario is that we all have to just compete on pricing. Who's the cheapest and most affordable solution? But I know, like, the reality is much more nuanced here. It's not how the reality actually looks. And you guys have really managed to stand out here. And I know you're writing a book on how to avoid the sameness trap by something called pattern interruption in marketing. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, that's a great one. So I think so my realization generally is, so you're 100% right. I think every software category is now getting crowded. Like ours is especially brutal. I think anybody in MarTech or sales tech is like the worst affected in terms of like just it's insanely crowded, right? But also like I mean there's also like this very common report that like literally every speaker on a conference mentions, which is that MarTech landscape report, right? And in 2011 there were like 1100 vendors, and I think 2024 there was like 15,000 vendors. Like you can't really see any logos, and I think with vibe coding and cursor and all of these different tools that are making features and products really fast to sort of ship, right? Like I mean, we could be at 50,000 products in MarTech, but it's not just MarTech. It's also like I looked at the software listings across G2, right? So 2019, I think in total there were like 50,000 listings, and in 2024 there's 150,000, right?
Wow.
So we've 3x'd across categories, right? So it's not like there's maybe a handful of categories where there's very little competition, but even those are going to get crowded. So the question now is that if products are easy to copy, like sure there's a craft into like making the product very sort of scalable for enterprise and all, I get that, but I think the GTM motion is more important today than ever before, in the sense like you can build the most amazing product, but if it doesn't sort of stand out, you'll never get customers, right? So that's the big problem. And that was also like the business problem that I sort of was sort of handed maybe like 2.5 years ago when I joined Storyline, which is just like we had a great product. We were growing fairly quickly, but we were also not visible in, like what used to happen is that there'd be deals that would happen where there'd be like two or three competitors, and we won't even be in that consideration set. So even if we had a great product, we wouldn't like be able to win that deal. Or let's say we would enter that deal as not the first vendor, but like the third or the fourth vendor, right? So what happens is the first vendor decides the narrative,
Yeah,
and based
exactly.
on how you compared the first narrative to like the second, third, fourth vendor, right? So you're at a disadvantage, right? So we wanted to flip that. So how do we show up in the deal conversations, but also how do we become the first vendor that these people see so that we can have sort of an unfair advantage, right? And I think that was definitely not going to happen if we just went with the standard route, right? And I can tell you this for a fact that no amount of money can sort of help you get more visibility, in the sense like visibility is not equal to more
Money
money.
spent. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, like because we have competitors that have raised like 80 million, okay, which is insane. And yet their brand visibility, is like maybe 1/10 of what we are at. So that's probably like a misconception that I wanted to share with everybody. It's just that 40 million does not equal to you sort of having like this many brand searches or whatever, right? And that's kind of what we were like sort of we want to solve for. And then one of the things I sort of started thinking about is there are certain companies that did really well in terms of standing out, despite being bootstrapped, despite being sort of profitable, despite not having like big financial muscle or anything, right? One company that comes to mind is Basecamp, right?
Yeah.
And I always used to think like, how are they standing out, right? And like the simple idea that came in my mind is that, they basically go against the direction where everybody's following. And like just a simple thing, right? Like, okay, if everybody has the same website, we're gonna go, in another
Yeah.
direction. right?
We had one of the founders in the podcast, and he's definitely, what's the right word to say here? Contrarian. He doesn't shy away from going the opposite direction.
Yeah, was it
David.
CTO? Oh, was it Jason? Oh, wow.
No,
Okay.
No, David, right?
David.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he was the CTO, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, like I mean, if you see their podcast, their books, everything is just like very contrarian takes, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that was sort of like the idea that, okay, when my CEO came to me asking like, hey, how do we stand out? How do we be different? That's a very directionless question. Like, you ask something like, today I go to my team and I'd be like, hey, we need to come up with like this crazy idea that we can go viral with. Like on the spot, nobody can come with ideas. And also it's a very directionless question. Where do you even start looking, right? So I think that was a problem I was also dealing with. So I came up with something like, how about we look at patterns in the industry, in our ICPs and our competitors, and we try to disrupt those patterns? Because that's a lot more direction focused way that, okay, if everybody is hosting webinars, right? Let's put an end to it and let's, maybe sort of do a different take to it. And that's when we, had like an event called Demo Dundies, which was styled on the Office theme, right? So it was about constantly finding patterns and interrupting them.
All right.
And that's basically what pattern interruption is all about.
So do you have other examples of when you have disrupted what the else of the competitors are doing? Something
Yeah,
that worked really well, or maybe you tried something out, because I guess, every pattern interruption experiment doesn't work. So could you share some of those experiences?
100%. I think it's a portfolio, right? And
Yeah.
portfolio one is basically driving 80% and the rest are experiments. But you need to go through those experiments to find that one winning one. I'll share the biggest one that we've had, which is so in SEO as well, right? Like the traditional SEO path that everybody takes is they would create a blog article and then they put it out, right? And that's what we were doing for 3 years. It was like a standard blog that we used to put out, but it's too slow. Like I think in 3 years we went from 0 to 15,000 traffic a month, and AI, with the AI cost content creation had gone down to zero. It's just very hard to stand out. So we basically started thinking, okay, what can we do? So we came up with an idea that what if we were to go after our ICPs? Like I was really inspired by the SEO strategy that Zapier has. I don't know if you know about it, but they basically targeted integration keywords like calendar, Salesforce integration, and then they created a page for it, and they created 100,000 pages, and that was the seed of where Zapier sort of, at least in the initial growth that took them past 100 million ARR, right? So I was thinking about like, okay, what is a opportunity that people haven't seen and how can we find it? And the experiment was that there were our ICPs that were searching for these tutorials for the tools they use. So we are targeting sales and marketing folks. An example is Salesforce, right? Like, how do I merge a custom field in Salesforce? How do I connect my Salesforce to Pardot, or, all of those different queries. And I knew that we can do a much better job by just adding a demo in there. So like the page used to be, I think the experiment was, does Google need text to rank? And then what we did was we added just a demo showing how to merge a custom field in Salesforce, no text at all. And I think we published that with, I think, like 100 pages. And it was like immediately we saw like, I think about 60% of the pages were ranking the first page. 1 out of 5 pages started ranking number one, outranking Salesforce, HubSpot, Ahrefs, all of these big tools, right? So I was like, okay, this is an interesting opportunity. So we scaled it up to 7,000 pages, and now
All
it's
right.
like,
So do I understand correctly that you used your product to show a demo of how you did something
yeah.
instead of just having text?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
okay.
you can actually just go onto the website. There's like a tutorial section in the footer and actually see it. But it's basically the story lane demo that we had put in there on the website.
Okay.
And yeah, I think now we're at 7,000 pages and it's about 250,000 in traffic. And
Wow.
that not have been possible with blogs. And it's not just traffic, like there's actual data. So like our PLG revenue particularly. So we've got a PLG motion and a sales-led motion. PLG signups grew by 3x.
Yeah.
And I would say like signups as in paid subscriptions. And what was interesting was we actually saw a few enterprise deals come in, because the companies that were looking at like these Salesforce tutorials were fairly big companies, right? So it was a very, very profitable thing. I would say like one of the leading ones why we went from like the 2 to 10 million journey so fast.
Yeah.
And that is, again, this comes back to the whole pattern interruption, right? Like everybody's following the same SEO playbook. What can you do to disrupt that pattern? And somewhere you find like these sort of interesting plays.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it sounds like it's a lot of work for you guys setting up demos for that many different sort of tutorial setups. But of course, you're the pros at that. But anyway, it sounds like a lot of work.
It actually wasn't. I think it's like if you, because I have a background, like I grew up from SEO. Like that was sort of like the channel
Mm.
that that's like the deepest channel that I know about, right? It's more about like systems and process. So it wasn't us doing it. We were
Mm.
actually working with many contractors and virtual assistants to actually create those pages.
Yeah,
And we set up the entire page structure and everything all automated. So
yeah,
really the only effort the contractors had to do was go actually create the demo. The rest
yeah.
of the page was all done and created. So we were actually producing pages that I would say like one every hour is what was. So
wow.
think of it more like 200 to 300 pages a week being published.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a lot. So,
Yeah.
Madhav, I'm curious here because like everybody wants to stand out. Just like you said, if you don't, like, you're not going to be pre-selected or not on the short list. If you make the short list, you might be option number 3,
Yeah.
which is a losing game here. So everybody wants to stand out, and everybody wants to find these elements where they can break the pattern. Like, I'm interested to find out, like, how do you actually identify and decide on which patterns are worth breaking versus which are not? Because I'm going to give you an example. Like, sitting where we sit now, we feel that there's a strong pattern that every SaaS company and their executive teams, they've decided we're going to be thought leaders. So you see all of them taking to LinkedIn and becoming thought leaders and so on. Maybe that's a pattern that's worth jumping on. Everybody should do it or not. Like, but sometimes maybe there's certain patterns that, how do I know that this is not the right thing to actually bet on, that we need to go in the other direction? How do you decide that? Is there a framework for that?
Yeah, so I have a framework like inside Swirlin, we call it PIPE, which is basically Pattern Interrupt Portfolio Engine. So the way we've done it is, like the first step is pattern identification, but you're 100% right. Not every pattern is worth going after. Like an example is that you could literally wear a duck suit and stand in the center of Dreamforce and get a shit ton of attention, but it's not going to drive your pipeline, right?
Right.
That's where a pattern interruption doesn't make sense. But the I is, so the way it is like, so the P is basically identifying the patterns. The I is basically finding the interruption guardrails. So what are the guardrails? Particularly, it could be a bunch of things, right? um, does it fit into the buyer journey, right? Like, where does it fit into the buyer journey? Like, is it educating about your product? Is it on brand? Is it off brand? Like, there's multiple things that you can look at, right? And that's how we basically, like, the way I work with my head of brand or head of product marketing is basically like we sit down and it's like, okay, here are the campaigns, like, we could potentially do. Now, which ones actually make sense, right? And I would say, like, almost 2 out of 10 ideas, or maybe 1 out of 10 idea actually makes it through. So that's why the guardrails have processified it. Like, they won't even come to me until they know that, okay, this is the answer that, for like these interruptions. But to your question about how do you like find, I think your initial question was like, how do you find these pattern interruptions that'll actually change that,
Yes.
outcome that we were talking about, right? So I think there it's more like you kind of know what your portfolio is, for your marketing portfolio, and like what channels are going to drive results for you, right? So like in our case, like I know, for example, that if there's an events playbook, there's an influencer playbook, there's an ads playbook, there's an SEO playbook, like I know these things are going to work for us. It's more about within these, what can I do to disrupt the pattern, right? So in our case, let's say, for example, if we wanted to become, like the first of three, become the first vendor that's discovered, we
Right.
had to come in front of our prospects before anybody else does. So that basically means going after the companies that are not in the market, but actually the other 95% that is, just sort of there, right? So the play is like, okay, let's focus on brands. How do we make the brand work, right? It's about, okay, finding these unique event opportunities, finding these unique sort of audience segments in particular regions and doing a campaign there, right? So
Yeah.
like I'll give you an example. Like again, maybe examples help, but it's like the way that started out was what we realized was that a lot of like the US marketing conferences that used to happen, especially like the niche ones where there were like a lot of like good ICPs that were coming in, we saw that one of our competitors was talked about quite a lot there while we weren't, right? And why was that the reason? The reason was just like the influencers knew a lot more about the other brand and they weren't even aware about us, right? So how do we get into that inner circle was the first business problem to solve. Like, how do we enter that, right? So the first thing I did was I just started doing podcasts with all of these influencers. Like it was, I started a series called GTM on the Go, and it was like a 5 minute, 5 questions series. And I just did that, and I'm like, I'm gonna try to take like a piece of content and just get them to share it with their audience, right? So, and also build a relationship, right? So I did about 12, 15 episodes, and that basically was like, okay, this is an in, okay, these are the people that I want to target, and they now know about Storyline, right? And then it was like, okay, the next thing is how do we do a campaign with them? How do we get in their network? It was step by step, and the metric that we were sort of optimizing for was like how many brand searches are we growing. So brand searches, if I could quantify, it's basically how many people searching for Storyline that are coming in Google Search Console. So if you go in there and you look for brand search queries, you can actually see how many people are coming in there. So that was the metric that we were optimizing for. And I can give you some context there. Again, because you want numbers, right? We had 1,500 people searching for Storyline every month about 7 quarters back. Today, we are at about 12,000 people consistently every month searching for Storyline, right?
Oh, nice.
So
That's a nice
where,
bump.
yeah. So, and once you have that sort of traffic, right, then you have a very unfair advantage, right? Like there's people searching specifically for you, channel agnostic. And that's why it was like the focus was there.
Yeah. And now we've been talking about inbound demand generation, awareness, and so on. But I mean, what about sales? Like direct sales-led motions and so on. Do you have anything to share there that you have done yourself or that you have seen that also is disruptive and can give you an advantage?
What do you mean by direct sales? As in like, I mean, Storylane is 80% sales-led, 20%
Yeah.
PLG in terms of revenue split.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, also when it comes to the
Let-
sales
let-
part.
Let's
Okay.
pause a little bit there. So Sveki, hold on a little bit. Sveki is our editor. Thomas, I guess your question is like, when you put your salespeople in front of people, like how do they stand out, right? Or
Okay.
Tom, is that your question, or maybe it's not your question?
Yeah. Something around that. The sales-led motion, is that also an area where you can be disruptive?
So,
Okay.
like,
And I can rephrase the question. We can take it from there, but we can just see, is that something that you have some thoughts on, or that you have worked with, or is it more on these other areas that we have discussed already?
so it's mostly sales-led motion only for us. PLG was just the demo-led SEO bit.
Yeah.
Everything else is a sales-led motion. And so for us, the metric that I am responsible for, so the end metric is obviously revenue. That's what I'm sort of measured on every year. But the metric that marketing follows is sales qualified leads and opportunities. That's what we're optimizing for. Okay.
Yeah.
And right now, our pipeline is 97% inbound. There's only 3% that comes from outbound efforts that we do. That's also owned by marketing. 97% is inbound. So now,
Okay, so I will take my question again. So
Okay.
Sveki, everything that was now, you can just skip, and then I'll take a question and let's see where it takes us.
Okay.
So you mentioned that your product, you work a lot with inbound marketing. People can discover the products online. They can see your solution. You mentioned the tutorials. So what is your main go-to-market motions? Is it product-led or sales-led, or what does that look like for you guys?
It's mostly sales-led.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even if you get the leads inbound, then, I mean, it's a sales process to actually land the deal.
Correct. Because even
Yeah.
if we get the PLG signups, the motion there is that, okay, the PLG signup is good, but we want to see how we can expand that account. So
Okay.
we try to, be
Yeah.
PLG.
So when you come to that phase, when you actually have the sales representative interacting with the customers to land the deal, do you see that there is ways that you can stand out in that phase as well? I mean, they might be talking to your competitors and they are also sort of in the same phase. So any thoughts about that?
And I'll give you a background story here, Madhav. Like when Thomas and I, when we used to have real jobs, last time we worked together, we represented a very successful and these days, also at that time, a big product information management system. And I was running revenue there and sales. And I could sit in sometimes with my reps and listen to their session, even the best reps. And in my mind, I'd be like, great, like he or she, they got the story down. But deep inside, I knew, like, if we remove our logo from the deck here and some of our branding, colors, and so on, this could be any one of our competitors saying exactly the same thing. We just sound like everybody else. And then we went through a big exercise with a very expensive American consultants to rebrand and reposition to try to stand out. But we had this issue of, like, once we get in there, I was like, gosh, we did all this hard work, but we sound like everybody else in the sessions. Like, it's difficult to understand where we're different. The only advantage we had is, like, we came in first, which was, you know, a little bit of our saving grace.
Yeah, and a big customer and partner community that I also think made a difference.
Yeah. So what I would say there is this, it's a very, very, I guess, like there's many answers to it, like what happens there. Where marketing has full control, I would say, in that entire conversation. So there's a product job also that needs to happen in the sense like, are we innovating in the sense like,
Yeah.
do we have products that none of our competitors have? You know, the other thing is like, are we leading the category? Not just in terms of like whatever G2 motions or anything, but more like, do we have, like, are we leading for like, okay, we built this and then we have proof that the competitors followed, right? So that's a whole product-led motion, and that's what another script that, you know, sales could potentially follow, right? But what we do to enable sales is like a couple of things. One is, obviously, there's a lot of product marketing work that happens in creating, giving them whatever enablement assets they need. But within those, the interruptions I'll tell you is like case studies, for example, right? Like everybody knows that the case studies are always biased. There's always good things about the product, right? It's like, oh, yeah, you know, we had our ROI 1500% increase because of this product, and it's all good, right? But I think buyers want a lot more real ones, and they also want something that's a little bit more contextually relevant, because what case studies do is they talk about the outcome, right? That because of this product, we got this outcome. But most people don't know what's the stage of the company, what's the behind the scenes that happened, you know, like a company growing 3x, you know, if it's a 10 people company versus a, you know, 1,000 people company, it's very different, right? So that context matters. So we actually changed our case studies to be more like the behind the scenes process. Like, tell me about when you purchased Storylane to you sort of getting the outcome. And we basically explain that as a story, and we packaged it like a recipe. So like the series was called Demo Kitchen, and then we basically packaged it as a recipe, and that became an asset that, you know, all of these salespeople could follow, right? The other thing, for example, that we did is, if you look at our website, like, if you look this from like 2 years ago, you need to look like a sort of, I would say, company that's bigger than you actually are, because that was another issue that we had. Like, you're looking smaller than we actually were, right? So whether that's in terms of the, you know, visual brand polish, but also like surfacing the right sort of accounts and the language, right? So right now, if you look at our website, it's very, I would say, mid-market enterprisey language, the logos showing up, the way the colors are, you know, chosen. It's not super bright, but it's like kind of there, right? So again, we're like kind of positioning towards that, right? The other thing also is like, when we have like another thing, for example, is that the feedback we got from sales was that the first call is just 30 minutes, right? And if we spend the first 30 minutes demoing the platform to them, right, then we don't have time to discuss about the next steps and, you know, things like that, right? And we want to move the deal forward. So, you know, what can we do about it? So another thing that we did was we started sort of another sort of, there was like a email sort of campaign that happened before the call, which is like, we're going to send you all of the, you know, demo links and resources and everything, right? Playbooks and how you can use it. So they actually come in and be like, okay, we're self-educated to some extent. Now let's talk about the real things, right? So it's just small things there that we were sort of helping in like closing there. But like my main job is like, how do we just get quality accounts to these people, and then they just have to close those deals.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I want to come back to, I think, what you alluded to earlier, and you also mentioned it, that this pattern interruption, it needs to be some kind of a portfolio, and you need to build a muscle where it's a repeatable exercise and not just, a one-off or let's do a brainstorm session and then we do it. Like, if I'm listening to this, if I'm a CMO, like, what does that mean that I need to build a portfolio, and how do I build this repeatable muscle? What's your recommendation here?
Yeah, so I think the reason why I keep saying you need a portfolio is because there's a lot of companies, or let's maybe equate it to even just like the music business, right? Like, why
Yeah.
is, for example, Mike Posner a one-hit wonder with like that I took a pill in Ibiza? Versus like a Taylor Swift or a Coldplay, right? Like which have like just they could create a greatest hits album, right? It's because it's like it was sort of part of the system, right? And that's what a lot of B2B companies also do is like they look for that one big viral idea and then they'll just basically ride on that wave forever, right? Like they'll talk about, oh, we did this and that's the only thing that they did. We needed to make it sort of built into the system, right? Like not just like in the way like like actually build like sort of things. So I'll tell you a couple of things we do. One is every quarter, so we're a remote team. My entire marketing team is fully remote, but every quarter I bring them in, sort of like a boardroom, and then we call that those days the lock-in, which is basically like 3 days. We'll have everybody in the room, no agenda. It's literally looking at everybody's work and all of us sort of trying to identify patterns and then us collectively figuring out how to disrupt it. So like by the end of every quarter, we'll have this lock-in, and then through that, the new campaign ideas will come. So there's never a single quarter in the entire year where we're not testing out pattern interrupt ideas. That's, like for example, right now, one thing that like there's multiple interrupts that are going on, but like one is, for example, the CMO dinners that usually happen, right? There's just so many that are happening. It's almost become a pattern at this point. And so we've been trying to figure out how we disrupt the format, right? Like how, they happen, how the conversations happen, the format of it. Like one example is that, why do it in a restaurant setting, but, why not book like a VIP box at like a Clippers game or something, and then, like try to initiate conversations from there. So it's basically like making that a habit, like, interruption, but also looking at the pattern interrupts in sort of like a portfolio style. So, you could call it top of the middle, top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. You could call it width or depth. You can call it whatever you want, but you need to understand what are the interrupts that are more for wider awareness and what are the interrupts that are more for like depth, actually going and like driving that awareness for customers, right? So we've got campaigns that, like, for example, you might have a campaign. This was one that we did in September where we basically created these flyers, which is like Rome wasn't built in a day, but your demos can be. And then it had like this whole sort of thing, and then we had like somebody dress up as Julius Caesar and go and like distribute it at inbound and all of that, right? That's more width as a portfolio of, right? But then the depth ones are, for example, the Demo Dundies event. I give you an example about, or for example, we have this series called Finer Demos Club webinar, which is taken from a reference of The Office, which is like Finer Things Club or something like that. So it's basically based on that. Customers want to learn from customers. So how about we create like a series which is off the record? So there's no recording available. It's just one time you show up and we'll have them show like full transparent metrics, but you won't get any recording. You can't save anything, right? So we've been doing those sessions and trying to figure out how more customers hear about more use cases. These are all what I would say fit into the depth portfolio, right? And that's why and I would say the split between the width and depth depends a lot on what the company's goals and things are. Like for example, early on, I think the bigger bit was like how do we drive wide awareness, because we wanted to enter into that segment, right? Now, for example, our brand awareness is like number one in the entire demo automation category. So now it's more about, okay, how do we keep driving more expansions from existing customers? There's a lot of depth campaigns going on, and also B, if let's say other companies that are also coming up with products that are competing with ours, how do we continue either refining the messaging or the way we present education about our products in like these depth campaigns? So that's how I sort of think about the portfolio for it.
Yeah. So before Daniel takes another question, I need to take a short break. So yeah,
Okay.
I'll be right back.
Oh, yeah.
Family and life, my friend. Like they've had the most unluck you can imagine. So they usually spend winters in Thailand at this. It's essentially a Swedish colony. It sounds horrible to say, but it's in a nice way, like where it's a Swedish village that's been
Okay.
built up there, and there's two Swedish schools from first grade to ninth grade that
Mhm.
follow the Swedish curriculum. So if your kids go there, like it's approved by the Swedish school system, so they're not missing out or anything.
Mm.
But all three of his kids got really sick
Okay.
essentially the entire trip. Like it was some stomach bug, salmonella that then somehow managed to, like the bacteria, they all got what's it called, pneumonia.
Yeah.
So like I think they've been there for a month and a half now, and probably a month they've been in the hospitals back and forth. It's like crazy. But today they all came back to the hotel or to the house that they have there. So but I guess they're still need some love and attention here.
My God, like, and that's what I was thinking. I thought he was based out of Thailand, but that makes sense, man. That's horrible. Like, I know when kids get sick, right? Like, I mean, I don't have three, I just have one, but like, uh, even with, I sound like a noob, but like, even with one sick kid and like, even once the parents are sick, it's just horrible. But anyway, are you still in Amsterdam though? You're in Amsterdam, right?
No, I'm actually based in Sweden, in the very south of Sweden. So where close to where we have, I live in the suburbs these days. That's how boring I am. Close to where we have our Malmö event.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Oh, so
Yeah.
and are you originally Swedish as well?
Yeah, yep, I am. I am. I see myself as a citizen of the world because I spent right after college a year in Germany. Just work took me there, just completely coincidence. And then I
Yeah.
spent almost 10 years in the US trying to learn the American way of, again, work took me there, coincidence. It was never in the plans. And then we moved back here. So I have a non-Swedish last name
Okay.
because my parents are from the southern Europe,
Okay.
like a small country called Macedonia.
Yeah.
Uh, my wife is American Vietnamese,
Yeah. Mm.
and we live in Sweden now. So it's like I always tell my wife, like, our kids will be either the most confident people here in Sweden, like in the world, or they will be so confused. Like they have really Swedish American names, like Anglo-Saxon names, but with a Southern European last name, and they kind of look a little bit Asian, so to say.
Oh,
So it's a great mix. So I was like, I don't know, Melissa. Like either they will be super confident or super confused. Let's see. What can you do? What can you do? It's like so. Citizen of the world is as I see myself.
makes sense. Yeah. I don't know why for some reason I always thought you're American because it's just the way you talk, the way you, I guess like you feel very Americanized now.
I don't know. It's like 10 years there, married to one of them.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. Maybe. Uh, it's been fun. I mean, I had the pleasure to take two businesses there.
Okay.
Um, Equally painful both times. So I sometimes joke about it, but it's really the truth. Like I said, my biggest success in the U.S. is I tricked this American woman to come back to Sweden with me. Well, on the business side, it was good, but it wasn't great as some of the other stories you hear there. People say like, "Oh, I went there and we crushed it." It was just painful. Like it probably took 5 years of my life. Like I'm not going to turn 100, only 95 because of that exercise.
Yeah, I remember you told me, right? I think you were running sort of like a offshore agency or a web dev shop or something, right? And then you got like this really big contract from
Yeah. So the
Kickstarter.
first business that took me there was a German business. It was not my business. I was
Oh,
also hired gun there, and we crushed it, especially in Germany.
okay.
We crushed it like with like anybody we would show up to. Like it
Yeah.
was a win as long as we got into the room. And this was like before you did remote demos and remote meetings and stuff. Like as long as we got into the room and we would sell to big manufacturing companies.
Oh,
Like
wow.
it was a 99% hit rate. That's how efficient we were. And we would win sales in Germany deals based on demo, like based on the damn buttons we would press in the demo. So we took that model to the US, and I was the one tasked to set it up.
Okay.
Let's just say it was an awakening the first year. Like I had so many people tell me in the first year, like, Dan, I don't care about your buttons.
Yeah.
Tell me, am I going to make money? If so, how much? Am I going to save money? If so much? And our entire system, as you speak about it, like it wasn't built to talk about ROI.
Yeah.
Our entire system was built like, let me show you the tool.
Yeah.
Let me click on these 25 buttons and you'll love it. But the entire buying process was so different in the US. It was really painful for us to make the adjustment. And then, as you can imagine, I had to fight the German mothership and be like, guys, our German model doesn't work here. And they were like, what do you mean? We're crushing it. I was like, it doesn't work here. We're going to have to reinvent ourselves. And that entire process, like it took us 2 years and like a lot of gray hair from me to try everybody to understand that we gotta be something different here.
Okay.
Yeah. Eventually it worked out, but it was painful. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, Thomas, back.
I'm back. Yes.
I will tell you might have the war stories over a few beers. Yeah. All right. So I have a couple of more questions, and then I see we're 7 minutes from time here. Then we'll wrap up. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Sveki, we go again. So, Marhab, I also wanted to ask you a little bit about how to get started with this process. So again, let's come back to there's a bunch of CMOs listening to this, marketing leaders, probably also CEOs and sales leaders. Like, okay, we also want to stand out. We also want to interrupt patterns. Like where do I start? How does an exercise like this start? And I also wanted to ask you a little bit from your perspective, and also what's your recommendation? Is there a person, should there be a person that leads the pattern interruption initiative, or like where does this responsibility actually live? Because sometimes we see initiatives that if there's not a clear owner, it doesn't get done as nice. If they say like, oh, okay, we share responsibility, all of us, it doesn't get done as well as if you say we all have a carry into this, but it's Anna that drives it. So who is Anna in your case?
I think it's the leadership. So in our case, it's me and my CEO, and in the sense like the CEO is pushing for pattern interruptions, and sort of their version of pattern interruption is like, how do we innovate? How do we do things differently in the product side? In my case, it's more around demand gen and like the whole GTM motion, right? Like, so it's got to be driven through the leadership, and downwards, and then like I would say, like as you sort of build it, like as a muscle in the team, it becomes like everyday language, right? Like it's like, oh, we don't do things this way, we always do it differently. So even if you go to any sort of Basecamp employee, right, it's now probably built into their muscle, right? Like that's what I would say. So that's one, like definitely leadership driven. But so how do you get started with the pattern interruption, right? I think it's more. So first is, I think you just need to become really good at identifying the patterns, right? Like every company today has a bunch of patterns they're following that can or potentially be broken. So it's more like, I would say, auditing what you're currently doing and basically sort of looking at like, okay, if it's doing well, fine, that's great. If it's not doing well, like, what can you do differently about it? Like there's a few examples that I can share. Like one is, I'll just take the simple example is, most companies have the exact same sort of these 4 or 5 things, right? They'll be running a monthly webinar series.
Yeah.
They'll have an email newsletter. They'll have sort of like case studies, and like the way they're usually done. They'll have a product comparison page that'll be like, I don't know,
Right.
we're the perennial champions, and the other is like the full loser, green, red crosses, all of that, right? These are all things that are right there, right? Now it's more about, okay, everybody follows this. I think that this is something to think about, right? Like most of these companies that are running these, right? I can bet you on it that the webinars don't have a lot of people coming in. So it'll be like 20, 30, 40 people, unless they're doing something very different, right? Or the newsletters hardly being read, or it's just being forcefully pushed out and they just have a high unsubscribe rate, all of that, right? So you look at those things and you try to do, okay, what can I do differently? Like, it's like the same tactic in a different way, or it is like, do I just drop this tactic altogether, right? Like another example, what I see is that there's companies that start, let's say, podcasts or some sort of episodic series, right? And they just continue on it for years because, hey, we have this reputation. I need to push out a new podcast episode every week. But why? You can always have seasons of things. So that's how, like, for example, when we did podcast, right? It's more like, let's do a 12 episode series. That way, once there's an end date to it, it doesn't become cyclic. We put our best effort into each episode. And then by the end of 12, we end it, right? And then if, let's say, if there's people that are asking for it, we can always bring it back, but it doesn't have to be cyclical in nature, right? So it's identifying, okay, like we're running podcasts, like why? Like why are we running it? Like, is it even actually getting any views, or like, is it getting enough views? If not, just end it. Like, okay, this is the end of season one, end of story, you'll get to season two, right? It's identifying these certain things. Another, and I'll tell you, there are places where you can find these pattern interruption ideas, right? So one that I found very interesting, I was actually chatting with somebody a few months ago. They've actually built an agency around it, surprisingly, is that they look at how other companies in different categories are actually tackling the same problem. So an example is that how are the brand visuals used in a B2C company? So for example, if you're B2B, the best way is like, okay, look at like, I don't know, maybe a very funky sort of, like you've got those Tony's chocolates at
Yeah.
in Amsterdam, right? So look at that. If you look at the sort of shops, if you have been on those, right? Like they're like these really disruptive visual design, right? So, and then can you take something from that into your own B2B category, right? Then it's sort of like a disruption idea, right? But that's more on the visual language. There's also things that, like, for example, what's working really well in another category might not actually have not even been tried in your category. So, for example, like, um, this is what happened with influencer program, right? That B2C has a very, very mature influencer program. B2B doesn't, right? But what if you did that same thing in B2B and then you'll suddenly have like a lot of good results going on because essentially they work. So that's how you can find ideas. That's one way. The other way is like look at your own thing. So I'll give you another example. Right now, we have a third product that's coming in. It's an AI native product, right? Now, if you look at the entire AI suite of products, they all use some sort of a personality name. There's a Mindy, there's Ollie, there's a, I don't know, just every random person that there, right? But the issue is that everybody is doing that. At some point, we're gonna have personalities, but they're not self-explanatory, right? Like, okay, you have a Mindy, but what the hell is Mindy? Or you have an Underlord, but what is Underlord? That's Descript's thing, right? So why not disrupt that and maybe make a sort of more sort of non-personality sort of a name, and then like make it a little bit more self-explanatory, right? So that's why we have a product called Lily, which we actually now rebranded to RepX because we wanted to sort of show that it has rep capabilities and all that, right? So it's just looking at your portfolio. You just got to build that muscle of identifying patterns and then finding creative disruptions from it, and they come from all places and all walks of life.
Yeah, interesting. I think both me and Daniel, we are thinking about how can we disrupt what we are doing and looking at that. So probably we will get some good ideas from this. We have to just lock ourselves up for a few days somewhere. Let's see when we find the time for that. But great. This has been great, Madhav. Thank you for sharing. I mean, if we're looking now, you have a great growth. You have a lot of things going on. But what is the future for your company? You mentioned a new product. Is that the main things, or is there something else that that will happen the next 12 to 18 months?
So I think there's lots of things, but I'll tell you an interesting one is that we are seeing a huge growth in expansions. So
Yeah.
like that was one of our fastest growing verticals as well. So like how do we, because we have a lot of big accounts, think of Alibaba, Amazon, Microsoft, all of these, right? These are like huge upsell accounts. So how do you upsell, right? You either, upsell through different teams or, sell multiple products or different geographical regions and that, like that's kind of, or like sell AI usage credits, based on product. There's multiple ways to expand, but that is one of our fastest growing things. So what we're looking at is how do we drive more relationship building with our existing customers and do a very heavy bit of a customer marketing playbook. So that's kind of like a big focus area for marketing at this point.
Yeah. And of course, your book. So when will it be out there?
So the draft is already submitted. It's in production. So it's
Yeah.
probably a month and a half from now. The cover design is currently being created. So yeah, it's probably Feb end is what we're gonna go for. Just need to figure out like how to make distribution happen. Like I don't even know how to get something on an Amazon bookstore. So all of those things need to be figured out.
No, and I think you should also bring some books to the SaaSiest conference in May, where you also will be on stage, right? So that would be a great opportunity to get hold of the book, but also to talk to Madhav, and we are really looking forward to have you. If you get to have one more person on your team, what kind of person would you like to add to your roster?
I was thinking about this yesterday. It's a very timely
Yeah.
question. An AI content creator.
All
I
right.
want somebody to be able to use these Descript and all of these. There's like a bunch of these AI tools, and like people are creating these really creative, fancy films with like these AI tools. I want somebody who can do that and bring some sort of interesting ideas to life to stand out for us.
And how can you get in contact with you?
Yeah.
Oh man, like I mean, if you have an amazing sort of any sort of B2B portfolio which is built through AI
Yeah.
content, right? Just
Yeah.
share it with me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there.
Okay. Great.
Fantastic. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time, and we look forward to seeing you again here in a few months already. Like time flies here when you'll visit us in Malmö. Super excited about that.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Well, I hope you guys have a good one. Thank you so much for inviting Thomas. I wish you all the best with your family.
Yeah.
And hope everything becomes better.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Take
All right.
care now.
Right. Take care. See ya.
And stay.